Mass Effect Legendary Edition. This is the remaster of the original trilogy with most of the DLC packaged in. In case you missed it, it was recently reported that the Pinnacle Station DLC will be excluded from Legendary Edition because the original source code was just completely corrupted, and so to release this DLC, they would essentially have to remake the whole thing from scratch, which apparently would take them a whole 6 months with the entire team involved, which they can't afford right now. So Pinnacle Station DLC, as far as we know, won't be making it to Legendary Edition, which BioWare said was heartbreaking, but alas, this is the situation that they're in. But even without that one DLC, this is still a seminal series, and people are looking forward to seeing the game come into the modern era with more modernized graphics. It's a remaster, so don't expect anything revolutionary like a remake, but you can see right here from the trailer that it looks pretty good, and generally the reception has been positive, and there are visual changes that have been made, and so there are some people who prefer the original, others who prefer the Legendary Edition. Obviously that is all up for debate, and it is going to be personal preference, but generally speaking, I'm looking forward to it. I have not played the Mass Effect trilogy in years now. This is a good excuse to revisit that seminal story. And the game isn't too far off. It's coming out on May 14th, 2021 for the following platforms. So that's 3 months from now, which really isn't that far away. With that out of the way though, there is some controversy surrounding this game revolving around butts. You heard right. Butts are controversial with the Legendary Edition because beyond some changes to the visuals, whether it's, textures, lighting, models, you name it, they're also changing certain camera angles due to what BioWare perceived to be out-of-place camera shots. If you've been scouring for Legendary Edition news, you might have encountered headlines like this: Mass Effect Legendary Edition will dial down the butt shots. Mass Effect Legendary Edition has adjusted those gratuitous shots of Miranda's bottom. In Mass Effect Legendary Edition, BioWare bounces bootylicious butt shots. And then finally, here's a headline from PC Gamer: Mass Effect Legendary Edition will cut back on the butt shots. So when people started to see these headlines, there were some who complained that this is censorship, that they're changing the character, and that the whole point of Miranda is to be this kind of sexy femme fatale. She's essentially this perfect specimen that was designed for a very specific purpose, so that sexiness is a big part of the character's role within the narrative of Mass Effect. And so after seeing these headlines, there were plenty of people who were touting that they were censoring Miranda and that they were diminishing the purpose of the character. But from what I'm seeing, what they're changing are essentially specific camera shots and specific sequences where things like shots that clearly emphasize the butt makes less sense. So scrolling down here, you'll find a quote by project director Mac Walters, who referenced character environment director Kevin Meek when speaking to Metro, talking about how Meek brought up certain camera shots in specific conversations where it doesn't make sense for the focus to be on Miranda's butt. So he said Kevin actually called out some camera cuts that were just, why was that focusing on Miranda's butt? So in some cases we said, okay, we can make a change there, but ultimately to change an entire character model or something like that wasn't really. It was a decision that was made as part of many creative decisions, and just showing it at the best possible fidelity that we could going forward is really the choice for all of the art that we had. So it is emphasized right here that the goal wasn't to do anything as drastic as change an entire character model, but rather make some finer adjustments here and there. And one conversation where the camera angle is going to be different that's been brought up is this sequence right here, where Miranda's talking about her family and her sister, and it's a pretty serious conversation, and the camera is focused square on her butt. And while Shepard is clearly looking at Miranda, making eye contact with her eyes or her face, this camera angle makes it seem as though Shepard is more interested in her butt than whatever she's saying, almost like he's not even paying attention. That's just how it comes across. Another quote from BioWare worth bringing up is this one right here from character environment director Kevin Meek, who said, "So a male Shepard animation would have him sitting with his legs quite open with a low camera, where if you were wearing a skirt, it would be a bit unflattering. So we can't necessarily change that animation, but you can raise the camera up slightly to reduce the problem. Specifically referring to this shot right here, where you see female Shepard wearing a dress with a skirt and just having her legs spread wide open because they use the same animation for both male and female Shepard, whereas if there was a separation, the game considered the fact that female Shepard was wearing a skirt, maybe she'd be sitting a little less, exposed. And so to compensate for this specific conversation, they're raising the camera up a bit so that the focus isn't so much on, what's between those legs with the skirt kind of wide open. And here we have a tweet from Liana Rupert from Game Informer, who have been doing exclusive coverage of Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and so she has some insider knowledge on what's going on with this trilogy remaster. And here's what she tweeted out in regards to the butts controversy. She said, YouTubers and some sites are blowing this massively out of proportion, so let me clarify really quick. They are not changing her body, they're not touching her romance scenes at all, they are adjusting the camera angles when she's having a serious talk about her sister's life. I get that people need clicks and censorship headlines to drive clicks, but this is not censorship. If they change her body type or romance scene, I'd be upset because that's censorship and there's nothing wrong with being sexy. This is not censorship. Some of y'all need to chill. So that's her take on the matter. As for what my take is, well, it's very similar to Liana's. If they were making drastic changes to the character model so that she'd be less sexy, less, seductive, then I'd be like, but why? Especially when the purpose of the character is to be this perfect female specimen, this seductive kind of femme fatale type of character. Like, that's the surface level role of the character, and obviously as we delve deeper into her storyline, you get to explore the nuances of her backstory more, and that's what makes the character so compelling. So for them to diminish her sexiness, I think, would be detrimental overall to what was established in the original version of the trilogy. But that's not being changed. It's mainly stuff where certain camera angles don't make sense, and I personally agree that this shot is really bizarre in the context of what's going on here, where she's talking about her sister, her family, having a genuinely serious conversation. The butt shot can be a little weird and distracting. I remember when I first played Mass Effect 2, finding this to be rather strange. And, I moved on, it was whatever, but yeah, them changing this specific camera angle for this specific conversation, I think it makes sense. Same thing here, I think changing the camera angle so that it's less focused on her open skirt and more on what's actually going on in the scene makes a lot of sense and isn't some world-shattering change that will completely alter my perception of the narrative. So for me personally, if the changes only go as far as some adjustments to camera angles, taking into consideration the context of the conversation, I'm fine with that. Whereas again, if they were to change her character model in a way that wouldn't service the story, or if they were to touch up the romance scene so that they're less evocative because, I don't know, for whatever reason, when the whole point of romance scenes is to be evocative, and especially within the context of Miranda's purpose, at least her initial purpose, if that were to happen, then I would on some level understand why people would be upset. But so far, the changes I'm seeing all seem reasonable, all seem like they make things less awkward. And if you really are into Miranda's butt, it's gonna be there. They haven't changed her character model. You can always, visit her at any point in the game and adjust the camera to your liking, get some good angles, if that's your thing. That's still there as an option. So do I think any of this is censorship? Not really. They're not really censoring Miranda's butt. They're just focusing less on it in conversations where the focus shouldn't be her butt. And if that's the extent of the changes, I'm fine with it. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the Ass Effect controversy. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.